Okay, this video will be for the invisible zipper. So for this one, you're going to need to cut 2 of the back bodice. So this one is for the invisible zipper. Invisible zippers, unlike other zippers, have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So far we've done 2 standard type of zippers, lapped and centered. Both of those require a 3/4 inch seam allowance. This one only requires a 1/2. So we've got our 2 pieces here, 2 backs, excuse me, that one for each side. So make sure you flip it as you cut so you have a left and a right. Okay, before we can put these on, we need to prepare our zipper. So I've got a 7-inch invisible zipper. You can see from the front, the pool, and from the back, the teeth. So the teeth are actually hidden on the inside of the garment when you're done. So we're going to prep this by unzipping, and then those teeth that are hidden on the back, we're actually going to unroll those. So right here, I'm going to show you, this is the front of the zipper. When I flip over to the back, I should be able to see those teeth. And if I push them out, they should unroll to where I can now see the crease where they were folded. We're going to be stitching in that crease. So temporarily, what we're going to do is press these teeth out. So I'm going to roll it out and then take my iron and I'm going to press it to where those teeth are unfolded. And that'll allow us space to get our needle into that crease. Just like that. We're going to do that on both sides. So again, unroll it and then press it. And don't worry about melting your teeth. They can take a little bit of heat. If you walk away from the iron, you see it, leave it sitting there for a whole minute, they might melt. But as long as you're standing here, they can take a little bit of heat. They shouldn't melt on you. There we go. So now both sides are fully unfolded. Okay, now we're going to prepare to put this on our garment. I'm going to grab one side at a time. Make sure that when you're putting this together, you're looking at the front of your zipper. So here I can see the front because I know that's where my pool is. I'm going to take my zipper, match up that, this is the wearer's left, and we're going to flip it so that zipper is face down, right sides together with our garment. Okay, make sure that your top stop is 1/2 inch below the edge of the fabric. So your top stop on this one, instead of being a metal clamp, you'll see it's either a plastic clamp, or in this case, it's a portion where the teeth have just been melted together. So that's my stop. I'm going to make sure that that's 1/2 inch down from the edge. And I want to make sure that the crevice, that fold that we undid, so right at the edge of my ruler right here, is 1/2 inch in from the raw edge, the vertical raw edge of our back. So 1/2 inch down, measure it this way, 1/2 inch down is where I want my stop. And then 1/2 inch in is where I want that crease. So here's a closer view of what that should look like. You can see the edge of my ruler is sitting right in that crease. The teeth are to the left. And then the edge of my fabric is 1/2 inch away from the crease on the zipper. Okay, so I'm going to begin pinning that down in that location. Okay, now we're ready to take this over to our sewing machine and stitch it down. We're going to stitch one side at a time. So I'll stitch this one, we'll come back and pin the other side and stitch the other side separately. Okay, over at our machine, we're going to switch out our standard foot for our invisible zipper foot. So this is the invisible zipper foot. It looks like a little block, has a hole in the middle, and then on the bottom side it has 2 grooves. Those grooves are where the zipper teeth will sit whenever we stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one on. And now I'm going to grab my piece with my zipper on it, and just like I said, the zipper teeth are going to sit in those grooves, and you've got a left and a right one depending on which side of the teeth you need to stitch. So right now I'm going to stitch on the right hand side of my teeth, so I'm going to put my teeth into that left hand groove so that my hole where my needle is going to go through sits over to the right where I need to stitch. Okay, so we're going to do that. You'll have to start a little bit away from the edge of the fabric because your teeth don't start right at the edge. So make sure that you scoot down a little bit whenever you're putting that in. You can see right now that the edge of my fabric is at the back of the foot. Okay, and now I'm going to start stitching with my back stitch first. You can back stitch all the way to the edge of the fabric to make sure that it's secure, and then move along. And you'll see this little tail that's sticking out. You can either put it through your foot before you begin or after you begin. After you've done your back stitch, you can just cut it off. Okay, so keep my edge of my fabric at that 1/2 inch, and then my teeth will go into that groove, and that helps guide you along your way. Okay, we're going to stitch down as far as we can because you'll see here we're about to hit that stop. The foot is too bulky for us to zip our zipper like we've done on past zippers. So when we get there and our foot is touching that stop, we're just going to go ahead and end. So right here, I'm going to do my back stitch. Okay, now I can take that out, and you should have your zipper stitched on there. Cut off those thread tails, and we'll head back to our ironing board so that we can do the same for the other side. Okay, so we've got that one side stitched on. Now we need to stitch on our other side. So I'm going to grab my other back piece. I'm going to flip this zipper so it's face up. You can see just like that. So just fold it back like you're pressing that seam allowance back. So now I've got both sides of my zipper face up. So this side now needs to go right sides together with this side. So this is the part where if you don't do it the way I'm doing it, you could accidentally twist your pieces. And whenever you go to zip up your zipper, your pieces wouldn't match up properly because they'd be twisted. So make sure to do it this way. Fold back your side that you've already stitched so that you're looking at the front of the zipper. And then with this other back piece, we're going to take that whole thing, the whole zipper and back that we've already stitched, and flip it so that it's right sides together with our other piece. Again, we want to make sure that it's 1/2 inch down from the bottom, the stop is. And that our crease is 1/2 inch in from the edge. We can start pinning. The biggest thing is that when this is zipped up, these 2 tops need to be even with each other. So match up your green tops, or your zipper tops in my case. Match up these zipper tops and make sure that when you're pinning it, that you have the same amount sticking off the top. That way, when you zip it up, you know the edges of your fabric are going to be even, okay? Okay, so I'm going to continue making sure that this is 1/2 inch in and pinning. Okay, now that that is pinned, we're going to head over to our machine and stitch it just like the other one. Okay, so for this side, we're going to do just the opposite of the other. We're going to put our teeth into that right-hand side so that our hole sits off to the left. Make sure that you start a little bit in from the edge. So the edge of my fabric right here is at the edge of, or the back of the foot. And then we're going to back stitch to the edge of the fabric and then continue on. Make sure to keep that crease at the 1/2 inch. And then same thing, we're gonna stitch just until our foot touches that pool, and then we can do our back stitch. Okay, so once you've got both of those stitched, this is what it should be looking like. If you've got them both folded back, you should be looking at the back of the zipper. And if you've got them both, again, folded back, you should be looking at the zipper teeth sticking out in the middle with the front of your zipper where the pull is. Okay, so now we're going to zip that up. And at this point, before we've pressed it, you should see where it starts to look like a regular seam, and that zipper is hidden in between. So that's why it's called an invisible zipper. It gives you that seam effect versus a being able to see the zipper teeth. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is finish this portion at the bottom that is not stitched together. So on this sample, again, this is a very short portion, but on a garment, it would be from the end of the zipper all the way down to the hem if it was a dress, which is a very common application for the invisible zipper. Okay, so to do that part, we're going to put these right sides together. And we're going to fold back this little zipper tail temporarily. I'm just going to pin it back out of the way so that I can access these seam allowances that are down here. And right where my stitching stopped on both sides, I'm going to clip. So right here, where my stitching stopped, I'm just going to clip through the seam allowance. So here you can see it closer. I clipped from the edge to right where my stitching stopped. You can see that little black stitch. And I'll do the same on the other side. And what that's going to do is that's just going to allow us to release. Let me clip this one a little bit more, a little further. Okay, that's going to allow me to release those seam allowances. So now I can put them right sides together right here. And we're going to stitch that last portion at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, just using a regular straight stitch. Okay, so the one challenge is going to be, excuse me, that's it fully pinned with my little pieces right sides together. The one challenge is going to be getting as close to that stitch as possible. So you can see that little black stitch where my stitches ended. We want to try and connect to that and then continue on at a 1/2 inch all the way down to the bottom of the garment. Okay, so coming over to the machine, we're going to switch out our foot again. And instead of using our zipper foot or our invisible zipper foot, we're going to switch to our standard zipper foot. And so I'm going to use the one with the hole over on the right-hand side. Okay, make sure that both of your tails are under that foot so that there's tension on them when you begin. And now I'm going to put this under here, and I like to work my way from the bottom up. You can see these are not quite matching. That it's challenging to get those matching exactly as you're stitching, since we stitch both of these sides of the zipper individually. So small differences like this we can usually hide in the hem or fix in the hem, but you want to try and get those as even as possible as you're stitching. Okay, so we're going to start at that 1/2 inch. So my fabric is at the 1/2 inch. I like to work my way from the bottom of the garment up to the zipper, and you'll see why as we get closer to here, I feel it's easier to get closer to that stitch and connect to that stitch doing it this way. So I'm going to start with my back stitch, just follow at 1/2 inch going up. And then once I get close to this area where my zipper is pulled back, I'm going to undo that pin. Try and get my fingers in there. Undo that pin so the zipper is now released and it's a lot less bulky in that section. And now I'm going to lift up my foot for a minute so maybe you can see a little better. So now I'm going to try and continue to connect this stitch to the one that I finished off right here. So we're going to continue stitching. And this is why I used the zipper foot with the hole over on the right, so I can get my needle as close into that area as possible. Okay, so get as close to that as possible, and then do your back stitch to finish off. Okay, so this is what mine's looking like right here in this portion. You can see there's a tiny little gap between the two lines, but they are as close as possible. If you can get those to touch, that's even better. Okay, coming back over here, we've got that fully stitched. So now we just need to open up our two back pieces and press. At that very bottom portion, we're going to bust it open. So bust that portion open, and then we're going to flip it over and we're just going to press this portion flat. So once you're done, you should have stitched close enough to your zipper that this looks like a seam. And then that transition from the zipper into the seam is where we need to make sure that that's as smooth as possible. I'm going to kind of smooth it out with my iron a little bit. Try not to burn myself. So that transition is going to be determined by how close you got those stitches when you were trying to connect the bottom stitch to the top. So if you have a large gap, you may end up with a hole, or if your stitch lines were too far apart horizontally, then you may end up with a big tuck right here. So if those are two mistakes that happen on yours, you can always seam rip just this bottom portion where we did that bottom seam. Just seam rip that and try again on that little portion. Okay, so that is our finished invisible zipper.